to another episode of the National League Natter podcast. We're already 10 game weeks in, and as always on the review show, I'm joined by my good friend from Oldham, Aaron. Aaron, how are you doing, my friend?
Hello, mate. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm relying on a bit of a heavy guidance this weekend because I wasn't present at any National League games really. And obviously kept an eye on the results, but I was at the biggest British boxing attendance of all time this weekend. Unfortunately, AJ got his jaw spun, but yeah, these things happen, don't they? And I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be back in natural, normal circumstances covering the National League, mate.
Very nice, very nice. So we're going to go through the games, and we're going to start with the half 5 kickoff. That was from Northwest
I wonder
London.
why.
That was wow. You're talking now to the top of the table. The Barnet beat Wiltshire 3-0 in the derby. And look, I was it was such a good day. Obviously, big rivalry for us. They hate us, we hate them. And look, we played really well. First half just didn't take our chances. Maybe a similar story to our season. And then second half we came out fighting. Mark Shelton again. He has been unbelievable this season. I think he's been the keyest signing for us because he runs that midfield unbelievably and slotted a penalty away, shushed the fans. That's what we love. We love a bit of bit of hatred towards them. And then 5 minutes later, Callum said made it two. And then look, we were just in control of the whole game. And last 20 minutes, nothing really happened. And then Nicky Kabamba finished it off to put us top of the table. So
I think
look, really happy with the performance.
I think it's an interesting one to look back on this because I remember from Thursday I was like, oh yeah, you know what I mean. Like obviously I know it's a rivalry and that kind of levels up the playing field a little bit. I'm thinking if Barnet got any aspirations, you deal with this pretty comfortably. I wasn't expecting anything other than a Barnet win, if I'm being honest, and that's proven. But I know you were a little bit more nervous and a little bit more tentative, probably because of
hmm
your previous records against them, I guess. But did Wildstone offer any sort of threat at any point really? Was there any sort of sticky moments in the game that you had to navigate?
Well, they had a good spell. They had a good 15-minute spell in the start of the second half. They were on the ball a lot. But look, the problem is in these type of games, especially against us, if you don't take your chances, which they did have a few, they're not going to win the game. And look,
Yeah.
I think we just showed our dominance. And look, we are really strong. I think we're now coming into it. Obviously, we've got Nicky Kabamba back and scoring, which is absolutely massive. Not having him for the last 8 games has probably been why we've had a couple more defeats. Gateshead game, if we have Kabamba, do we get a couple goals from that? Probably. But look, we can't look back on that. But look, I'm really happy, and look, we're top of the league, and
We,
we just got to build from that and stay there, hopefully.
we were just talking off camera a little bit because you obviously I'm not trying to say this to have a little bit of a dig, but it's funny, isn't it? Because you have lost 3 games already this season, but you are the only team in the division not to have drawn a game, which I think is an impressive stat. So like going into a Barnet game, there's probably going to be a winner for either side. How did you, looking back on the first 10 games? Did you see this sort of pattern of the start to the season? Really, did you see this coming in terms of did you expect not to have a draw in the first? Like I know it's hard to say. Did you expect not to have a draw? But I'm quite surprised that you not even had one draw.
Well, we've had two last-minute winners against Forest Green and Altrincham, so you could probably say maybe, but I think if you look back on the 10 games, would after 10 games, would you be happy with 21 points and to be top of the table
Absolutely.
100%?
Yeah.
That's such a good start to the season. And look, we had a really tough start. We've played Gateshead away, we've played Forest Green, we played a good Southend side. So look, we've not had the easiest start, but to be top is really good. And I think we've gotten
hmm
bar Tuesday, we've got a nice run after that. So we just got to
From,
kick on and just see
from a
what happens,
Worldstone
really.
point of view, then now we've been touching upon all season really that they seem to kind of get themselves in the fire and then somehow every season get themselves out the fire again, and survive. But if we're looking at the league table, even though it's still a little bit early for me, really, if I'm being honest, 10 games in, they are sitting 22nd in the division, only one win in 10 and 6 losses, and they've only scored 6 goals, Chris. How much of taking the rivalry like goggles off a second and going to a like journalistic point of view, How much of a worry is this if you're a Swans fan? Do you think that you've only scored 6 goals in 10 games and you have only won once in 10? Like, I'm not saying panic stations yet, but something needs to change quickly, sure.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I think obviously they got a good result last week at Forest Green, getting coming 2 goals down to get a point there. But look, I do think they're lacking just up top. Their patterns of play are all right, but look, I think you stick with the manager at the moment because I do see something coming from that. And look, I think they're not an awful side, but look, they've got a bit about them. I think they have enough to stay in this division. I think you've just got to give it a bit of time with the manager and just see how they kind of adapt to his style because it's a very different style that they played last season. Obviously, it's a lot more. Last season is a lot more hoof it up, and this season it's a lot
Direct.
more
Yeah.
more direct passing, very possession style, a bit like us, a bit like Gateshead, and they're going towards that kind of style of football. So, yeah, I think you give it time, and then if it gets to a point, maybe December-ish time, and you're in a similar position, then maybe you try and twist with the manager situation.
Nice, nice. So moving on now to uh, a game that I remember from Thursday, we had completely different predictions on, and I'm quite obviously I won't ruin that ahead of Lauren's return on Thursday, but I am quite happy because I came out on top on this specific duel, and it is Gateshead versus Forest Green now. Now we said, we said Gateshead needed a response, and if we're being honest, they probably got the opposite. I mean, I know Forest Green are going to be a difficult game for anyone, but it looks from all I can go is off stats as well. So please, not no fans cook me if I say something that's completely opposite to what actually happened. I wasn't in present this weekend, like I said. I'm trying to do my best, but from what I've seen from the stats, it looked like Forest Green controlled it for the majority of the game and were well worth the win. And I think it's really interesting from a Gateshead persuasion now because this is probably the first time in maybe 2.5 seasons, probably going back to Mike Williamson as well, where Gateshead probably style of play and management and tactics are actually getting tested and challenged a little bit. And you're looking at them and thinking maybe they're not this sort of tiki taka sort of like untouchable passing team that they can do. Maybe people are starting to cotton onto the patterns of play and stuff. And I think it's a really interesting sort of point for Gateshead because obviously the Rob Elliott is a wonderful, wonderful coach, and I'm sure they'll get out of it. But it's not been a very good week for them, really, has it? And speaking about response and we're going to have a response, and then turning up in the manner they did, really, is a bit disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, just on that point of the style of play, you've got to understand that Forest Green are the complete opposite in a style of play. They just sit
More
in and
direct. Yeah.
they are hitting on the counter attack and they're really happy to have 30% possession and Gateshead are probably the opposite. So it was like it's an interesting game because you're coming up against A and Z in terms of football tactics. But
Yeah.
for Forest Green, look, they're going to be super happy with that. Obviously, joint top with Barnet, and they've started well this season. They did lose against us, but you can tell that style of play will work, and it has worked really well. So I think from a Forest Green perspective, they'll be really happy with that performance. But from
Let's
Gateshead,
just
it's
go on. Sorry.
sorry, just from Gateshead, it's just disappointing. Obviously, you want to bounce back from the 7-1 defeat, and then to lose to Forest Green. Look, it's a really tough game, but you're going to be disappointed with that for sure.
Let's just touch hypotheticals really quickly, and obviously we'll touch more on that. So this is going to be a bit of a bumper episode, this one this week, because we've got a Tuesday game week tomorrow. So we're kind of going to do half review, half little tiny preview with no predictions, which I'm sure Chris is happy about. But just on Gateshead, so let's say hypothetical, they lose again tomorrow and make it 3 defeats on the spin. Do you think they maybe need to look at, because we touched upon after the 7-1 defeat, and even I said when we played Gateshead, you press Gateshead and they panic a little bit, they crumble a little bit, you don't give them that respect, and you get in the faces a bit. They can't play the football they want to play, and I wonder whether this is what's sort of been happening in these last 2 results. But hypothetically, if Gateshead will make it 3 losses out of 3, what sort of discussions or how quickly would you say that they think they might need to look at a bit of a different style of play?
To be fair, I don't think they need to. I'll be completely honest. I think obviously these kind of style of players are very, very tactical, very detailed. So, especially for new players coming in, it's a tough adaptation, especially with the National League. Saturday, Tuesdays for many times in the season. And look, I think they've got a nice fixtures coming up as well. Boston on Tuesday, then they've got
Yeah,
Southend, then they've got Wealdstone and Tamworth, where you expect to beat Wealdstone, Tamworth, and Boston, and then Southend are hit and miss at the moment. So I
yeah.
don't think it's a tactical adaptation that you really need to do this early in the season. If that carries on, potentially, but I still think Gateshead are a really strong side, and sometimes in football you have your off days. I think last Saturday definitely was an off day for Gateshead. It happens. But look, I
Hmm.
think they've got that style of play. They've got a really good manager in the dugout, so they've just got to keep doing what they're doing. I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, it's definitely one to keep an eye on for sure. And like I said, I think the Heat are really strong side, and they'll still be up and around it. But I think every team probably goes through tricky periods, but it's probably more highlighted at the minute because it's the first time we've probably seen Gateshead come under consistent pressure for a while. So it's an interesting one. Moving swiftly on now, we're going to touch upon the Eastleigh Dale game, and now this is we talk about Gateshead needing a response. We also said Rochdale probably needed a response off the back of their loss last week, and unfortunately, that didn't happen for Rochdale. It seems to be. I mean, I don't want to put the curse on them too much, or maybe I do. Who knows?
Mhm.
It seems to be when they're actually coming up against the how do we say it? I don't want to say the bigger teams in the division, but probably the more competitive teams in the division, if you will. They're just kind of ever so slightly getting edged out of games and undercooked a little bit, and that's seems to have been what's happened this weekend. They were away to Eastleigh, and it was a goal bonanza really. Chris. Six goals in the game. It was a 4-2 split. Eastleigh won 4-2, and actually Rochdale started really well. It seems like they started on the front foot. They raced into a lead with um, who else but Cairo Mitchell goal. I'm sure that's his sixth goal of the season already, by the way. Um, and that and then you're thinking, okay, they've got the early goal. Can they protect it? Can they sort of defend it and sort of find their way into the game that way? But when you've got Chris Maguire and Paul McCallum facing you, it's going to be a long day if you don't try and search for maybe a second or a third for insurance. And lo and behold, the Eastleigh came back into the game rather quickly, and by the 35th minute, Eastleigh were winning 2-1 thanks to a 22nd minute Paul McCallum goal, and then a, a 35th minute from Ludwig Francelite goal. I'm gonna, like I said, I haven't seen the goals, but if I was to make a blind prediction right now, unless Chris is going to tell me I'm completely wrong and he's seen it, I
Mm.
would, considering he's a centre half, that's probably a set piece goal, maybe.
I've
But
not seen it. I would
we'll have
assume I would go with your guess.
we'll have to double check that. But yeah, so and then from there, really, they um, carried on the ascendancy into the second half, and then they make it 3-1, thanks to Chris Maguire, the veteran, on the 60th minute mark, and that's probably game over. But we know Rochdale have a bit of fighting spirit this season. We've seen it multiple times, and Devante Rodney gets on the scoring sheet for Rochdale to make it 3-2 at this point, and then Paul McCallum steps up and converts like an Iceman a 77th minute penalty to put the result beyond Rochdale and kind of get Eastleigh back to winning ways as well and get Eastleigh back in a bit of good form. I think it just proves Chris Maguire and Paul McCallum make Eastleigh without them. They struggle with them. They look a far superior side, don't they, Chris? I
Yeah.
From a Rochdale persuasion, though, this obviously we'll look at who they've got on Tuesday shortly, but I think this is kind of it's true what we said. We don't want to take any credit away from their start because it has been incredible, but when they come up against maybe the teams that you need to kind of get points off to get promotion out of this division, they just ever so slightly come in. getting edged out of games and not doing enough at the minute. Would you say that that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I would say so, but you also got to look at the table and look, they are fifth. You know, they've started the season strongly, but they've had two really tough back-to-back games. Obviously, Solihull last week, and then away to Eastleigh, who look, as you were saying, you know, their quality with Paul McCallum and Chris Maguire. They've got that quality up top where you know they'll concede goals, but they'll score. They'll usually outscore their opponents, especially at home. I feel they're scoring a lot of goals at home trying to make their stadium a fortress, which you know what they've had a good start at home this season, and yeah, Eastleigh started the season really strongly, and I think they're just going to kick on. Obviously, keeping more Paul McCallum was is mental, and to get a new contract on him as well to tie him down. So you know you don't have those EFL clubs or even some National League clubs in this league trying to go and pinch him. But look,
Mhm.
really good result for Eastleigh. But I think for Rochdale, look, they've started the season well, and I think it's a bit harsh to say about, how, they've dropped points in the last two games. You know, they are difficult games, but look, if you're picking up points, it doesn't really matter. And look,
Yeah,
they've looked strong, and they've just got to keep ticking away. And I think they'll be up there this year for sure.
yeah, 100%. And it hurts me to say, but I do expect them to be in and around the playoff places as well. But hopefully, another team that are minimum in and around the playoff places come May are my boys. Now, we have probably after a bit of a shaky start with the the run of draws, Chris. I think it's probably fair to say that we're starting to find some consistency in terms of we're 10 games in now and we've only lost one of them, and that regardless of what you think about like Oldham and where they should be or what we should be doing, that is good form for anyone really, and I think it's important to highlight that. And look, we have managed to get 6 points from our last two games now, and hopefully we're building ahead of steam. Now this game was extra special really, because before the game, it was announced in an interview with, well, not announced, but Mike Conduct did a pre-match interview and said, "This is it'll be the first time that his father's come into the country, and the first time that he's seen him play professional football in England." And it was almost as soon as that interview went out, you're thinking it's written in the stars here for him to go and have his moment. And then lo and behold, the 81st minute comes around, and Mark Kitchen whips a sorry, no, it wasn't Mark Kitchen. It was Regan Ogle whips a delightful ball into the box, and we were. In fact, Chris, you've seen the screenshot before. Obviously, Mikey puts a header away, but I think that's not really doing its justice. We might actually put the screenshot on the Twitter account for you guys to have a look at as well, because the leap that Mikey gets up to meet this header is quite astounding, isn't it, Chris? Really.
It is impressive. It's similar to when Ronaldo scored a header when he was at Juventus. You know, he's gone a good, maybe he's probably 7 foot in the air at this point, and look, massive goal. And Mike Fondop's unbelievable. What a player.
I mean, he's on. What's that now? I think he's on. Is he on maybe four already this season? And for someone that the fan base and probably maybe Mickey Mellon at the start of the season, when you're looking and you're thinking, you've got um, Alex Reed, James Norwood, Joe Garner, Mike Fondop. Mike Fondop is probably third in command there because many people were probably expecting the experienced partnership of Joe Garner and James Norwood to start when they were both fit. But I think for as long as this happens and for what Mikey gives us in games, he's got that he's got that number 9 shirt now. If you would, that's kind of his. So it's about who plays with him. And look, personally, and this might be a surprise to a couple of people. And I love him, man. He's an absolute bagsman, and he does put the chances away when he can. But if James Norwood isn't scoring, he's very ineffective on a football pitch, in my opinion. So for the time being, I would go with a front two of Joe Garner and Mike Fondop because I think that's our most effective partnership. But anyway, that could do a whole tactical breakdown on Oldham's tactics and going forward. But we're not here to do that. But just touching upon then, like I said, one defeat in 10 now, 4 wins, 5 draws. We're building, aren't we? We're building. It's a good start, you know. We're in the playoffs now. We're 6th in the league. You know, like, I can't argue with that. And I tell you, I was so slightly unrelated, but kind of related. We were watching. Me and my friend were watching the results come in on final score, and my friend is a Burnley fan, and they got like a 94th minute winner to win their game and put them well in the playoff places in the championship. And obviously Oldham scored late, so you can imagine the scenes in that hotel on Saturday as we were waiting to go to the boxing. So yeah, great start to the season for Oldham. And the thing is, I think as well, I think if you look at the XG, not that I'm a nerd and everything, but if you do look at the XG in our game so far, we probably should be putting teams further away than we have been doing, which indicates to me there's more to come from this Oldham side, which is quite an exciting prospect for me, but I think it's quite a unnervy prospect for other teams in this division. I mean, I know you give me banter and whatever else, Chris, and I give it back. But you said before we came on recording, didn't you, that you are a bit worried about Oldham this season and what we could potentially create. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on that, and then we will touch on Yeovil quickly as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Well, I've been impressed with Oldham, to be fair. I think coming into the season, I was a bit, not hesitant, but just intrigued how they would do, because obviously they kind of fell off last season near the business end, and it didn't happen for Oldham. They didn't get in the playoffs, and I think they've had a good summer, and look, they've only lost one game this season, which is really good. That's up there with Barnet and well, not Barnet, but they're up there with Forest Green with the least losses, and look, they are the form team, as we'd like to say. They've only lost one game against Aldershot, which was probably a bit of a freak result, and as we said on that podcast, wasn't a 3-1 game, but look. Oldham can be
4-1.
really happy. 4-1, yeah, exactly. It shouldn't have been 4-1. But look, Oldham can be really happy with the start to the season. And look, they're up there, they're only 4 points off the top. So it would be interesting to see if they can keep that form up. And who knows what happens, As we said, we're only 10 games in. So it'd be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks for Oldham, for sure.
From a Yeovil perspective for a second, then I think at this point I probably do need to take my nostalgic uh, glasses off for Yeovil because it has been, if we're being honest, it's been a poor start, hasn't it, for them really? Um, again, I don't know whether it has been a poor start considering the newly promoted, but I I just I look at their team and I think they've got a bit more. The team can give them a bit more. I don't know whether that's a problem with the manager, whether that's a problem with the tactics, whether that's a like a problem that Mark Cooper needs to address. But I do think they should be able to maximise the talent that they have in that team a little bit more. But they never really threatened in the game, if we're being honest, and the stats back that claim up. Even Mark Cooper said it was lucky to stay at one. It could have been. He said if it would have been 2-3, he wouldn't have had many complaints in his post match. And it's. I mean, I know they've come up, so maybe survival and consolidation is the aim. But they they they've pretty much got an almost equal goals and against. They've scored 12 goals and conceded 13 with 13 points, and they have lost three of their last um, six now, and it just seems to be consistently inconsistent for Yeovil, right? Do you think that's probably the first saying?
I don't know. I think they started as I was kind of expected. Look, obviously, newly promoted side, so you've got to adjust to the level. And the way they went down in, I think, 2 seasons ago was just it was messy. And look, I think that club did need a rebuild. And look, they did that in the National League South in a team where they dominated the league, won it by 10 plus points. And just this season is about consolidation. And look, I think they've done that so far. Obviously, they've had quite a difficult start playing the likes of Gateshead, Oldham, Rochdale. So look, I don't think it's an awful start to the season, to be honest. And look, I think they'll be way clear of relegation. I don't think there's any, for me, I don't think there's any doubt that they'll stay in this division. I think they're too good for it for relegation. But look, I think they'll be happy with their start, and it's one of those where you just got to take it game by game. And they've got some good players, but you just got to wait and see. And they've sort of taken, they've got away from that drop zone. Obviously now they're 6 points clear of that in 10 games in, which is good. So you just want to consolidate that and then see how it goes in the season.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Now back to probably there's been goals in this division this weekend. I will say that another 5 goal thriller this time between probably an unexpected one as well because I definitely expected Sutton to win this, but I thought they'd win it probably by a more comfortable margin. So Sutton did pick up the 3 points against Ebbsfleet, but it was a 3-2 win for Sutton, and I'm looking at this game right now and the running order of the game. So we Sutton flew into the lead on the 7th minute and actually doubled the lead on the 51st minute. And you're probably thinking at 2-0, it's game over really. And then out of nowhere, Ebbsfleet kind of got a little bit of fire in the belly and not only pulled one back on the 56th minute through Dominic Pullion, absolute talisman for Ebbsfleet, has been for since he's been there. His numbers in the south were ridiculous, and he's always going to get goals at National League level. And then they also got the equaliser through uh, Domi on the 67th minute, and you're thinking, oh, okay, they've got a bit of bravery, a bit of courage against them, and maybe they can build off this. Maybe they can. But I think absolutely, obviously, given the nature of where they are in the table, they probably sat on where they were in the table and tried to hold on. And against a team like Sutton, you can't do that at the minute. And then Sutton were searching and got their goal on the 77th minute, and it's a stinger really for Ebbsfleet, isn't it? Because to let a to kind of let a 2 goal lead go and like to be so in a game and then get it taken away from you is always going to be a stinger, isn't it? I think, especially when they are where they are in the table. But I guess you could look at it from the other side of things as well, against a Sutton side that people are expecting to do decent things this year after a pretty faltering start. It's probably going to be a tough game for them. But I just wondered how you kind of saw the game yourself, really, Chris.
Yeah, I'm happy that Sutton have kind of both sort of come back up now. Obviously they had a really good start, and then they had the middle period last maybe between match day 4 and maybe 7 where they were just losing games. But no, look, two really good results in the last 2 weeks. Obviously, Southend last week, that was a game where I think that was kind of a must win just for confidence. And then again now another win, another three goals scored for Sutton, and look, they're getting back up there. I think they've had a slow start back in the National League, but look, they're just outside the playoffs, and I think they can be really happy with that win. Obviously, Ipswich with their new manager, sometimes you get these manager bounces, but look, I think really positive from Sutton and from Ipswich. I think it's much improved performances from the old manager, but look, they are now 4 points adrift, and
Already.
look, it's early days. They've got the worst goal difference in the league. It's a tough ask, I think, for Ipswich this season. But obviously they only stayed up last season, holding out a 0-0 draw against Bournemouth, where that is nicking it just about. But look, it's going to be interesting. But look, from a Sutton point of view, unbelievable performance, and I think they're kicking into their stride now. So really good for them.
Yes, I agree definitely. And with that, I think because we're doing an extended episode this week with a little bit of a preview, this is probably the perfect time to let you listeners hear from our wonderful sponsors. So we will be back in about 2 minutes when you're listening to this, and you can listen to our sponsors, and we will be back to cover the second half of the games. So yeah, we'll be back soon. And just like that, we are back. And to kick off the second half of the podcast, or the second half of the review, we are going to go to the two newly promoted, or two of the newly promoted sides in this division facing off this weekend in Braintree versus Tamworth. And I guess many people could have probably estimated, excuse me, that this game was going to be a bit of a tight game, a chess match, really. But probably not to our surprise, considering we've been saying that Tamworth have probably been the quicker to adjust of the newly promoted sides. Tamworth managed to not only get the win, but get the 93rd minute win, thanks to Tommy Tonks. What a name! What a football name that is, by the way. In the 93rd minute, and break Braintree hearts, but also send the away crowd whack dog. I could imagine, Chris. And I think in games like that, where it's probably they're the sort of games you highlight in a calendar when you're new in a division, and you think you need to take the free there against teams that are in and around you. It's perfect result for Tamworth, really, isn't it? From a Braintree perspective now, I am getting slightly worried. If I'm being honest, I'm not worried. I don't know, but what I'm trying to say is, I know that the aim will be to try and avoid relegation, but I think because they've probably got more money pumped into them than most of the other teams that have come into this division uh, from promotion anyway, then I think maybe um, there's probably a bit more pressure on them. Which I know we talked about the strike force specifically at Braintree with Effie Young and Akinde. But yeah, look, for Tamworth, I think it's a great result, and for Braintree, I think it's a bit of heartache, really, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, but I think everyone needs to see that goal because that goal from Tommy Tonks is probably up there for one of the goals of the season. Obviously, he's like 35 yards out on hits his shin, goes in, and it's such a good goal, and it's it's a great win for Tamworth. I think they need that. Obviously these wins, you get a big confidence boost, and look, now they're out of the relegation zone. But and they've still got that game against Gateshead, so they've only played 9 games. They've got 11 points, which is really, really positive. And look, Braintree, I was impressed with them last when Barnet played them, but look, only seven points from their first 10. But they do have those power players like Akindi, like Effiong, and two more Barnet players have gone on loan there, Jermaine Francis and Finley Wilkinson, who I think will power, a bit more pace, a bit more energy in that attacking third, which Akindi doesn't really have anymore. Fair play to him. And Effiong, they are the build of players are very different to Finley and Jermaine. So look, I think Braintree will be all right. They've started. They've not got as many points, but the way they play is promising. I think they'll be okay.
Is it too early to say this, or is there something to can? Do you think it could be big in terms of the psychology of both of these teams to one of them, get like the heart experience a heartbreak of a 93rd minute winner, but one of them carry forward the momentum of a 93rd minute winner against your relegation fighting rivals? What would you say about the sort of psychology of these results and how big they are for the teams taking part?
Yeah, they're massive. They're massive, especially at this stage of the season. Obviously, it's early days, and you want to pick up points as quickly as you can. You don't want to be going down into the March, April time, and you're really fighting for your lives down there. But look, it will give Tamworth a huge confidence boost for sure. And look, for Braintree, I think they need to stick at it. They've got a really good manager, and they've got a good core squad. So I do think they'll be okay this season. I'll be honest. I've been impressed with them, but look, it's a disappointing loss, especially like as well. It's a free goal in the 93rd minute.
Yeah,
There's not much you can do. That's just insane. It just
I
happens.
mean,
Sometimes that's football.
we'll probably put it on. Well, we'll definitely put it on the Twitter account. And I hate to be the cynic in the goal because it's an outstanding effort. But the more and more I look back at it, the more and more I'm slightly convinced it's like kind of rebounded off the defender's shin, and then that's what's took it high. But maybe you guys can have a look on our Twitter account and make your own decision. I'm not taking anything away from the moment because to score in the 93rd minute in any game is such an unreal rush, I imagine. But to do it in that manner, you think you must be on top of the world. But I do wonder whether there's been a bit of slice of good fortune that's led to the ball going that high. But like I said, you can make your own assumptions and your own opinions when we put it up on the Twitter. But moving on now, unfortunately, we have a string of draws to finish out the review on, and draws are a good thing in football, but we prefer to talk about wins, I guess, Chris, don't we? But it's just the way things roll sometimes. So we'll try and do this rather quickly. The first one was Fylde versus Woking, and sorry, I have picked up the classic Wembley flu. I think back of the
Pick up Wembley.
so you will have to bear with me a little bit in this podcast. But yeah, as I was saying, we've got Fylde versus Woking, and that ended 1-1. They the Coasters took the lead. Go on, Chris, without looking. I know you've probably already seen it, but if you were to do this blind and say, if I said to you, Fylde have scored, who is it? Your response would be,
Oh, that's a really tough question. I would take a little stab at Nick Haughton.
what a
That'd be my
surprise!
guess.
What a surprise!
Shock.
The man just scores goals, doesn't he? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, 49th minute Nick Horton goal was sent Fylde on their way, but then Lewis Walker scored in the 64th minute. Um, and it was his second goal against Fylde in successive seasons as well. So he obviously likes playing there. He likes playing at Mill Farm to cancel each other out. And I think, if I'm being honest, I think this is a better point for Fylde than it is Woking, with how Woking have started potentially. But look, again, what more do you really want us to say? Nick Horton, it's Nick Horton's world, and we live in it. Um, and yeah, a point apiece is a point apiece. Like I said, Woking will probably be slightly more aggrieved or more disappointed with the point, I guess. But yeah, Chris.
Yeah, look, Fylde, obviously, Nick Haughton's running the show down there. Obviously, 9 goals in 10 games is absolutely ridiculous. He's just averaging under a goal a game, which you know what is for this league is insane. For any league. And look, I think Fylde again. They're just it's that defense. That defense is really letting them down. Obviously, they've got a superstar up top, and then he must be kicking his teeth because he's like, I'm scoring all these goals, but you're in a relegation battle. It's like for him, it's going to be frustrating. But from Woking, they've had a weird start to the season. 4 wins, 2 draws, and 4 losses. They've been very hit and miss so far this season. But look, I think they take the point, and they're mid-table. I think they're trying to get an improvement on last season. Obviously, they're in a relegation battle last year. And look, I think it's a good point on the road. Fylde's long trip up there. And to come from behind as well to get a point, I think they won't be too frustrated with that. And sitting mid-table, sitting pretty after 10 games, I think they're in a decent position. So good start from them.
Yeah. Now, next up here, we've got Altrincham versus Boston, and this ended up 2-2. But there is much more of a story in this game than just it being an entertaining draw. Actually, if we're being honest, it's same old habits this season for Alty dying hard here, because they were handed I won't say a lifeline, but an advantage in this game when Boston went down to 10 men on the 50th minute mark, when the goalkeeper, Cameron Gregory, brought down Justin Amaluza when he was 1-on-1 and got a red card. So, again, you'll have to bear with me, but I don't know whether Boston had a goalkeeper on the bench. I would imagine they did, but I don't know who got sacrificed or anything like that. But so they 0-0. But also have an extra man, and you're thinking, go on, finally show us what you can do and press on the advantage. And they did that through probably two of Alty's better players this season in Alex Newby and Regan Linney. They scored 2 goals in a minute, Chris. I don't really know how that is possible. Newby was 66 and Regan Linney was 67. That is some crazy minute. And then you're thinking, wow, they could either, push for more, or they're at least gonna. They've got the two now. They're comfortable. 10 men, no excuses not to get the 3 points. But this is a confidence suffering Altrincham side, as we've spoken about, and fair play to Boston. You could have taken that line down and said on to next week, but um, Keaton Ward was like, no, this is not how we're writing the script. And on the 78th minute, he got Boston back in with a shout, and then Cameron Green found the net with an absolute pile driver of a goal, really, to secure a vital 3 points of Boston season in the relegation fight, and also just a pile on the nerves and the pressure and the discontent for Altrincham this season, I think, Chris.
Yeah, I think it's so. If you go 2-0 up with 10 men, it is criminal if you're not leaving with 3 points. Like,
Yes.
obviously, it's so frustrating from Ocean, but you got to give credit to Boston. You know, they've gone down to 10 men. They've been resilient, and they've gone and got 2 goals. I think. Obviously, we saw the Man City game yesterday. You know, I know it's not really relevant, but Arsenal, they went down to 10 men and didn't do anything. You know, they
Yeah.
just sat deep, faked about 5 injuries, and you know
I
they.
mean, the only thing I will say is you're talking about playing against the best team in the world compared to playing
That
against Altrincham.
that is true. That is true. But maybe Oldham are the best team in the world. We won't know that for sure. But look, fair play. You know they've come 2-0 down and they've come back. And look, it's a good point away for Boston. They'll be so happy. But Altrincham, they'll be kicking their teeth. Like, to
Yeah.
score two in a minute and then to go and draw the game against 10 men Boston. It's such a disappointing result for them. And they've they've had a weird start to the season. They were quite good for a good 20 minute spell against Barnet, but you know, 3 wins, 3 draws, 4 losses. They're in 17th. The Chris Concark loss is hitting them hard, and they're struggling. They're really struggling this season. But I still think they'll be all right to stay in the division. But I think it's going to be a low bottom half of the table finish for
Yeah, I
Altrincham for
agree,
sure.
unfortunately. And go on then, Chris, to round us off. And because I like putting you under pressure and giving you a challenge, we've got Aldershot York, which ended as the 0-0. So would you like to give your thoughts on that result?
Yeah, and interesting fixture to be fair. I think looking into the game before, you know, I think we both expected York to get with the 3 points, but Aldershot 0-0, and I was surprised there was actually no goals considering Aldershot have usually averaged about 3 goals in their games every game. But look, a 0-0 draw, an injury for Ollie Harfield suffering an injury, you know, in the 21st minute. That's a big loss for Aldershot going into the season, and it's a tough one for Aldershot. I think you know they've started the season in a strange way. Like they've scored so
It's
many, they've
interesting.
conceded so many.
We've said this about maybe 5, 6, 7 teams so far this season. Is there something in the
Mm.
air in the National League this year?
Maybe something's in the National League ball, but it's started like you got these teams where they've scored so many goals, but they're also conceding so many. But I think they'll be happy with a clean sheet against a York side who again are joint top of the National League. You know, you've got 3 teams all on 21 points after 10 games, which makes it super interesting. Obviously, last season there wasn't a title fight. Chesterfield ran away with it, and look, we had Wrexham and Notts County the season before that. But look, it's good to see typical football league teams such as Barnet, such as York, getting up in the fight. And look, it's promising. I think it's going to give us a really interesting end to the season. But I think York will be happy with a point away from home, and look for Aldershot as well to keep a clean sheet. I think it's one of those games where both sides are happy with the result.
Yeah, just in case my slow brain is completely misting because we are forever the professionally unprofessionals here on the National League Natter. I somehow think the Solihull versus Southend game has slipped through the net, hasn't it, Chris?
It has. It has.
I don't remember
You
touching upon Solihull
you got
more
very
so.
excited after Oldham's win.
That's it. That's it. So that's my apologies for that one. But we will do it right now. Right now, we're gonna
Mm.
rectify our mistake, and we are talking very, very quickly because then we're doing the preview part. But it was another humdinger of a result. Southend came up on top with a 4-2 away a win against Solihull Moors this weekend. And yeah, I think look, massive, massive result for Southend because we've talked probably about, you know, them probably not really being where they should be considering they've sorted everything out off the field now. We thought they were really going to press on for a title charge and a playoff charge, and it's not really happened for whatever reason yet for Southend. So maybe this could be the turning point and the sort of result to get them going. And just before we touch on Solihull starting the game and whatever else, Gus Scott Morris. Now, how many goals is this now, and how many goal contributions is this?
Eight goals already scored from fullback is ridiculous.
Eight? Did you just say eight ball skulls?
Eight
Um,
goals.
um, and that is like you just said that's from right back, which is like this guy is like
So
the National League Trent Alexander Arnold. Like what is happening? Um, and yeah, it's a fantastic result for Southend, like I just said. Um, poor result for Solihull, if we're being honest. But yeah, I just wondered whether you had your opinions.
yeah, I think Southend obviously they're in a difficult position. Obviously, everyone knows the troubles of last season, and look, I think they'll be really happy with this win. Look, I think they needed to kind of make a statement. To be fair, after losing, they got off to a poor start. Obviously, the defeat at Fylde in the midweek, and they've fair play, they've gone to Solihull and they've put on a show. 4 goals scored on the away win. That doesn't happen very often. If you score four away from home, it's going to be a good performance, and I'm really happy for them. For their fans, they've had a really difficult time in the last 2 seasons, and I think they're getting back to what they should be. Southend they're a League One, League Two side, and the amount of fans they bring every game. They're a credit to the division, and yeah, really really promising result. But from Solihull, disappointing. You kind of want to build on last week's brilliant result away at Rochdale, but they have not done that. But I think they've had a bit of a rocky start to the season. But again, be interested to see how both sides do. But look, I'm very happy for Southend.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So that is the review part done. And just very quickly, we are going to touch upon just some key highlights or some key fixtures that we will be looking ahead to tomorrow night and why. So I'll treat this as a prediction show a little bit, or preview show, I should say, a little bit, and I'll do a top to bottom, and then we can pick out some individuals and why we think that'll happen. So tomorrow night in the National League, we have this is the full lineup. So we've got Aldershot versus Barnet, we've got Altrincham versus Dagenham, we have Braintree versus Halifax, we have Eastleigh versus Woking. We have Fylde versus Tamworth. Gateshead versus Boston. Hartlepool versus Rochdale. Maidenhead versus Ebbsfleet. Oldham versus Forest Green. Solihull Moors versus York. Sutton United versus Yeovil. And Wealdstone versus Southend United. Now, straight away, there's three that are sticking out to me here. You've got probably Hartlepool Rochdale, because again, I think this could be a tricky one for Rochdale to navigate here. If I'm being honest, I think it is important for them to stop the rot two. I think three would be more of a concern. So I think that's one to keep an eye on. I think that's a tough one. I think that's quite a well balanced game as well. So either side could win that. I'm quite happy we're not doing predictions on this round of games, to be honest, Chris. Because I think there's a lot of teams that could. I think most matchups you could make an argument for either way. You know, so also then I'm also looking at what else have we got? I'm looking at maybe potentially. Well, Hmm. See, there's not many massive games, is there? Like, there's not many any like ones that you're thinking that are humdingers. I mean, obviously you've got my boys at home to Forest Green, which will be a big test. But again, I think that'll be it'll be an interesting game. Two sort of contrasting styles this season so far. We've had a lot of the ball, creating quite a lot of chances in games, and like you say, ha- traditionally, Forest Green like to sit in, kind of soak up the pressure, use their big kind of presences. Christian Dodge, Ben Toes has kind of soak it up, and then hit on the counter attack. So I think that's a really interesting one. And then I'm looking and I'm thinking the rest of the card looks pretty even to me, Chris. I just wondered whether you had any sort of thoughts, opinions, ideas.
Yeah, I would say probably the tie around is going to be Oldham Forest Green for me. Forest Green flying, Oldham also flying. That's the top of the table clash. That'll be an interesting one. Solihull York is quite a good game. I feel York, they want to back-to-back away games. They want to get a result, and my boys up against Aldershot, which I think will be a tough game. This it's a difficult place to go, Aldershot. Their fans are right. You're right on there. It's a proper old school stadium, and I think that'll be a tough game for us. But look, I would say probably the tie of the round would be Oldham Forest Green at the top of the table
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely, absolutely. Here's a question then, just to round it off, and again, you can let us know on the Twitter. At what point now do you think the table starts to shape up and like people can actually start looking at the table and trying to map out where they think they should be and like what the sort of routes would be? I would normally argue like 14, 15, game week 14, 15, so we're getting closer. But I just wondered what your opinions on that was, Chris.
I'd say probably a quarter into the season, so I think we'll know by not this Saturday, Saturday after. That's a quarter of the season already done. So we'll kind of have a idea of where teams are. If we've who are going for the title, who are going for playoffs, and who's going to try and stay in the division. But I'd say
Mhm.
once you're a quarter of the way of the season, you've got a clear idea on what your table's going to look like. But look, we've seen it before with Grimsby. They went on I think 16 unbeaten run in the last third
Yeah,
of the season and got promoted. So you never know. This league is absolutely bonkers. So anything could happen. So we'll just wait and see how that unfolds.
amazing. With the, I love a Tuesday night game week. I'm not gonna lie, it breaks my week up a little bit, and I like, especially now we're past the summer months. There's something quite calming about under the floodlights a football match. It's my favorite type of football match, if I'm being honest. So I'm excited for it. But hopefully, this podcast you've enjoyed, and it give you a little bit of a flavour of Saturday's games, and hopefully we can look at Tuesday's games with a bang, like the bang AJ took at Wembley this weekend. Um, and we have been the National League Natter, albeit quite a professionally hungover National League Natter duo, I would say. Um, but we have been National League Natter. You know where to find this podcast, or you should do by now. If you don't, we are on Spotify, Apple Music, and all the places you can get your podcast. We would really appreciate any 5-star reviews, any comments, get involved in the Twitter polls, the Twitter graphics, the predictions leagues. We've got loads of good stuff going on over at X, on National League Natter. Chris, unless you've got anything else to say, uh, I think it's time to wrap up.
I think that's it. Thank you for listening to everyone. And obviously, we've got the preview show back on Thursday and then my return next week. So
The
we'll
preview
look
show
forward
with
to that.
the preview show
I
with
will
the
not be there.
originals as well. By the way, with the originals are making a return together for the first time in 6 weeks. That is something to look forward to. I can't wait to have Lauren back, and hopefully,
I'm,
I,
I'm
I
buzzing
can
for
I can maintain the winning gap and the winning streak on the predictions league, and it doesn't start going wrong when she's actually back in charge of her own predictions. So you've got that to look forward to. But in the meantime, we will see you. Well, I will see you on Thursday. Chris will see you on Sunday, Monday, and we have been National League Natter. This has been the Match Day 10 review, and we'll see you soon.